Uh, Chair now recognizes the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Crenshaw.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Madam Secretary, for being here and helping us answer the fundamental question of whether we care about our sovereignty and the rule of law in our country. And unfortunately, I have the now cynical view that I'm not so sure we all agree on that we all value the rule of law and value the ability to manage our border effectively. A lot of questions have come up about the humanity of our policies, as they should. There's some rightful anger about family separation. But unfortunately, it's myopic because nobody ever talks about the other issues that we might have when it comes to our humanity. There was a young woman in my office yesterday. She's from Mexico. She's about 18 years old. She was taken across the border, kidnapped about 5 years ago. On the third attempt, because they were turned back twice by Border Patrol, on the third attempt they made it through, and she was brought to New York City where she was raped approximately 30 times a day for 5 years. I don't know why nobody talks about that kind of stuff. When I was at the border in McAllen, in one day, in one location, 16 kids came across with adults that were not their parents. Further questioning and follow-through led to a stash house with 54 people kidnapped inside in Houston. Nobody talks about that humanity. Those are direct results of the fact that our asylum laws are taken advantage of. That's a direct result of the fact that that woman in my office was allowed to walk straight across the border. Nobody stopped her. There's no wall, nothing. Would have been turned back otherwise and not been in New York City to suffer the absolute nightmare that she did. And then we get to the question of whether walls work. And this has been a really fun conversation over the last couple months. Do walls work? Madam Secretary, would you agree that there's 3 parts to security: personnel, technology, and barriers?
Absolutely.
Can you just take one of those away?
No, sir.
When I was down in McAllen and Brownsville, what we see is Brownsville has about 35 miles worth of barriers. And as a result, only 6% of the crossings in that sector take place because walls work. Would you agree with that?
Walls work, yes, sir, as evidence.
McAllen, about 1,000 people were crossing on some days because they don't have the infrastructure. Would you agree that the biggest difference between the McAllen corridor and the Brownsville corridor would be the physical barriers?
The wall system, yes, sir.
Been a lot of red herrings that have been thrown out there to argue these points. Drugs like fentanyl come through points of entry. Yes, we know. You would agree with that, right?
Yes.
Does that have anything to do with the conversation about whether we need barriers between points of entry?
It does not, because it's not an either or.
There's always the conversation about we just need more technology because then the border agents can just chase people around as we see, because we can sense them coming through. Is that the only solution, or do you need that plus barriers plus personnel?
We need all 3. We also need the ability to detain and remove when there's no legal right to stay.
There's a point often made that the border crossings are the lowest in years. We had about 400,000 last year, although that's quickly on the rise, as you've noted, 76,000 just this last month. The point is often made that because it's lower than in the year 2000, that there's no crisis. Is that accurate? Is 400,000 a year a low number?
Sir, it's not, but again, if I could, respectfully, it's because of the flow. It's because these are families. It's because these are children. That is why it's a crisis. It's a terrible, horrific journey that they undertake.
And let's get to that. As these arguments are made against points that, frankly, we're not even making, you mentioned the children and why that's the nexus of this crisis. Why does that happen? Is it because of our asylum laws? Is it because of the fact that if you bring a child across the border, well, and I think as you mentioned this before, if you bring a child with you, it's your ticket into the United States. All you have to do is claim asylum. Would you agree that our asylum process is completely taken advantage of?
Yes, sir.
Would you agree that if we were to put more resources at points of entry so that we could humanely bring people in and hear their asylum case, but not let them loose into the country, would that dramatically reduce these illegal crossings as well? Would that be part of the solution as well, to reform the actual asylum process?
Yes.
Are there any other issues in the last 20 seconds I have that you want to mention or follow up on?
I appreciate that. I would just say that my heart breaks for the system that we have. It does not allow us to help vulnerable populations as soon in their journey as we need to help them. There is nothing humane about a system that contemplates what we see today, that contemplates 60,000 children coming across the border unaccompanied, that contemplates the rape and abuse, the trafficking, the child exploitation, the 70,000 Americans who died last year from drugs. I am extraordinarily compassionate in my job, which is why I'm asking Congress to work with me to change the laws so that we can have a safe and orderly flow, so that we can take care of those who need asylum, so that we can take care of the vulnerable populations who believe they have no options in their country. That is why I spend so much time in the Northern Triangle, to help them build resilience and stability. And apologies, but thank you for the time. I just wanted to clarify.
Thank you. I yield.
Thank you. Ms. Nielsen,